So first let us get our MongoDB Community Edition launch. We will see our MongoDB is now to be connected. So this client will help us to see number of databases created. E-commerce database contains collections. So we would like to observe the heroes collection. This heroes collection has got almost 12 documents created, where the document has got name and description as fields along with ID. If you could just have a look, okay, few heroes of India has been listed here. So we have a requirement. This data we would like to access through REST API. Our REST API will be responsible for fetching this MongoDB database, and this REST API will help us to perform CRUD operations against MongoDB database, which is nothing but e-commerce, which contains number of collections. One of the collection is heroes. So get request, where if I just type the URL, I will be able to see number of heroes listed as a response. If I just pass the ID of hero using my get request, so I would be able to get as a response that is nothing but the ID matching collection object will return to me. So like that way I can also like to write a REST API or like to use REST API where I would be able to create a new hero and add that new hero within my MongoDB database through this REST API, which is called post request. At the same time, we can see the update message being shown to us, created, and if I use the delete as a request type and type the URL along with the ID of hero, so we are expecting after sending this request the corresponding ID matching, okay, hero object should be removed from the MongoDB. Or we can also do one more thing, we can update existing heroes information by specifying the URL along with the parameter ID, and finally if this is sent as a request, in a response we will get a message that hero has been updated successfully. So let us get started. We are supposed to create a Node.js application. This Node.js application required certain node models to be used for creating this application. So let us create a package.json file using npm init command. Let us provide some extra description, the information, so that package.json file will contain this metadata. You can see package.json file is automatically created. We would like to add dependencies, that means we'd like to resolve the dependencies which are going to be used for building this Node.js application. So Express, it is the node model, will help us to build that web tier. At the same time, we also require body parser. Using this body parser, we'll be able to extract the information which is coming from the request, which might be a body contain the object or parameter ID. We also would like to do one more thing. We'd like to make this particular REST API can be accessed through browser from some other computer also. So we require CORS module to be installed. And if we wanted to write the application as a Node.js application and wanted to get connected with the MongoDB database, we will require one more node model. The name of that node model will be called as Mongoose. These are the node models going to be dependencies for building our Node.js Express application. So let us come back to the visual code, and we would like to ensure these are the node models has been available and mentioned under this particular package.json file as dependencies. Now our next job is to create a proper model view controller pattern application. So accordingly, we will require here certain files to be created. So one file which is going to be the entry point file for your Node.js application, we will give that name as server.js file. At the same time, we will also add our REST API, all the logic under API folder. Under this API folder, we will try to create one more folder called config folder, where we will put the information about the database connecting as well as the port number on which our application is going to list. Okay, and we will have inside this particular Node.js application heroes as a folder which will contain the business entity heroes related CRUD operations written as REST API. So config folder will contain two files. The first file we will add it here with the name called properties.js file. As well, we also like to do one more thing. Okay, so this property.js file will be required for setting the metadata. At the same time, database related connectivity related configuration, we will keep it in a separate file. The name of that file will be called as database.js file. Now, when we like to make this particular application as a perfect heroes CRUD operation, so we will follow model view controller as a design pattern using the JavaScript code. We will define the model in a file heroes.model.js file. At the same time, the database connectivity code performing CRUD operations, we will keep it in a separate file. That file will be called as heroes.do.js, and any incoming request from the end user or through certain mobile app will be processed and handled by our HTTP handlers, which we will keep it under heroes.control.js file. So this is the way MVC structure would be maintained for this particular Node.js application. So we also like to do one more thing. We like to define different types of requests will be handled by different types of handlers. So how do we route this request? So where the routing logic will be kept? Routing logic will be kept under heroes.routes.js file. So this is what exactly the folder structure we would have it in a very simplified manner for writing Node.js application. Our next job is to define our business entity as nothing but hero. So let us create this particular business model heroes, but for that thing we wanted to define the schema for that business entity. So we will require the node model mongoose to be imported so that we can define the schema as a hero. So we are declaring a schema with the help of mongoose.schema inbuilt method, where we will pass a JSON object which will define the schema which is exactly matching with the structure has been defined under the MongoDB database. So let us see. So let me define here where heroes schema equal to, I'll write here where hero schema, okay, equal to new schema using mongoose model. Now this mongoose model, which is going to contain the schema, where we'll try to define the name and description as attributes with some kind of information, and this schema we would like to export so that it can be used in another function in another particular library which is called as a DO. So business data entity, business entity, we would import it within your heroes.js file, where our job is to write the CRUD operations against this hero schema with the help of mongoose node model. So mongoose node model comes with a lot of inbuilt functions which we can use it for performing CRUD operations. So for the thing we need to define the hero schema statistic. So I'm defining my CRUD operations like a structure. So create, get by name, update and delete. These are the functions I will define it here, where I will take care of writing the logic with the help of MongoDB node model mongoose to get connected. Okay. So let us use a hero as a object, and we will try to write the save method. We'll try to write the find method. We'll try to use the find method. And again, if we wanted to update, we will use the method called find one and update, and find one and delete. So these are the kind of functions we would like to call along with our object, that is called CB object. So this particular schema, we will export it so that this schema we can consume it within our application along with the hero object under the controller. So controller is going to be a simple JavaScript file where we will try to write the functions, business logic functions, against the request handling perspective. So let me first import the DO model which we created, and let me also define here something that is nothing but my business logic methods which I like to use it for mapping with my REST API URLs. So we would like to get again same kind of CRUD functions like create, update, delete. These all kind of functions we would take care of writing the logic which will call our DO logic has been already defined along with the MongoDB database module. So we would like to define a function as a create hero function, where the create hero function will have the object which you want to insert, that means to be created, and if it is going to be created successfully, we like to register the callback function. So every time you will find that every method which you write, that method will always take parameters which is nothing but the request, response, and next. So these are the three attributes we always define for every HTTP handler along with our express code. So can you just see the logic has been written for your get heroes? So whenever the heroes get function will be called, the query will be passed as a empty curly bracket with the help of all the records will be fetched. And whenever you want to get a record by a certain parameter, the parameter we can define by using like a name colon parameter, where we can see req.params id will take that particular id, correct? So methods has been declared where inside we will take care of calling our DO logic code, and at the same time we will write the callback function as a registered second parameter so that we can send the response back to the calling application. So this is the way we will define our get heroes, get hero, update hero, and remove hero functions under this controller. Now these all functions which we have declared as business logic functions or HTTP handler functions, correct, would be mapped within our routes. But at the same time, think about kind of logic we should write it for inserting new record. Whichever data is going to come along with the URL and the body, we'll extract that information and put that information under heroes and we'll pass it to the create function. Now, whatever functions we have written at this moment for our controllers, we have to map these all kind of functions with a proper REST API URL. So we will require a router. So this router will have method like a router.post, router.get, router.put, router.delete, and for this all kind of requests we'll need to pass first parameter, that route URL, and the second parameter will be nothing but the callback function which will be called when this kind of request will come at the server side. This is the router we would like to export so that we can use it within our server.js file, and we will register this particular route with our express object. So we know that we would like to get connected with a MongoDB database. So for that thing we have to define the connection. We have to call a function connect method. So connect method will be able to connect with your given URL. So where we will specify the proper string, which is going to take it from your configuration file. And here we are writing our standard express application. I don't have to explain other parameters because we understand whatever logic you have written under your controller, whatever logic you have written under your DO, we have to import it inside using the proper importing JavaScript files. And at the same time, we would like to define body parser we like to configure router, we like to call our database connectivity code. At the same time, we also need to handle it here configuring the HTTP pipeline by using app.use functions. At the same time, we also wanted to do one more thing. We like to set the CORS policy for making this REST API accessible outside of any other web application using browser. Okay, so you can find the parameters which have been configured using app.use functions. You can find more details about CORS policy under the documentation. This is the way we will use it now, our router to be associated with the Express applications. And we will try to call that particular routing information. Once your job is finished, our job is to now start this server tip in listening mode on port number 4000. Okay. So just for revision point of view, I'm just highlighting those points with the steps which are carried out inside this area. Correct? So we are trying to configure our body parser. We like to get our router associated with the Express. We like to call a code which will connect to the MongoDB database. On successful completion of that thing, we like to configure our body parser as a HTTP pipeline for Express application. Would like to enable this CORS policy so that I can access this REST API URL in another particular web application running on another port or another computer. We will register our routes with prefix as a API and we'll call this heroes routing. Once our job is done, we will set this Express server listening on port number 4000. This is a very simplified application we have defined as MongoDB connectivity code with the help of Node.js Express, which is internally going to use Mongoose as a node model, CORS as another node model, body parser another node model, and Express node model. Correct? So a very simply folder structure has been created. So when you run this particular application using your command Node.js, I think we'll get the output. Before that, I like to mention the folder structure properly so that you get a perfect idea. Let us build this program and run it. Get request, where if I just type the URL, I will be able to see number of heroes listed as a response. If I just pass the ID of hero using my get request, so I would be able to get as a response that is nothing but the ID matching collection object will be returned to me. So like that way, I can also like to write a REST API or like to use REST API where I would be able to create a new hero and add that new hero within my MongoDB database through this REST API which is called post request. At the same time, we can see the update message being shown to us. Create it, and if I use the delete as a request type and type the URL along with the ID of hero, so we are expecting after sending this request the corresponding ID matching hero object should be removed from the MongoDB. Or we can also do one more thing, we can update existing heroes information by specifying the URL along with the parameter ID, and finally if this is sent as a request, in a response we will get a message that hero has been updated successfully.